Hey everybody, welcome back to our series called Out of Control. This is week 4, and over the last 3 weeks, we've just been spending time as a community group discussing this illusion of what it looks like or what we feel like is being in control. And so today we're gathered with people from every campus, and so I just wanted to say welcome. Thank you all so much for joining with us and for spending some time with us. And let's encourage all the groups that are at home, and thank you guys for being here today as well. As I was thinking about this idea of this illusion of control, I started thinking about a show that I kind of like to watch on Netflix. It's called The Magician's Code. Has anybody seen The Magician's Code, where they give up like all the secrets of actual magicians? Have y'all not seen this? No. You need a rainy Saturday to sit at home and watch this. So yeah, there's this magician, and he wears this mask, super creepy looking, but he gives away all the secrets of these, magicians, tricks and stuff. And what's amazing to me is just how, with a couple of properly placed mirrors and a little bit of smoke or whatever else, how easy it is to be deceived, and how we watch something and we're like, oh my gosh, he just made that whole thing disappear or whatever else. And I was thinking about this idea of being in control and just how the enemy uses smoke and mirrors to throw us off, to deceive us, to make us think that we're actually in control of some stuff, right? We like to believe that we're in control of our lives, that we're in control of our, ultimate destiny in terms of our career, with the way our kids turn out and everything else. But at the end of the day, God is the one that's in control. And whenever we carry that burden of being in control or thinking that we're in control, the enemy wins, because we get super stressed out and it causes us to be deceived. And so today we want to continue that conversation and try to identify where are some of those smoke, where's that smoke coming from, where are those mirrors, so that hopefully we can realize that ultimately at the end of the day, God is the only one that is in control, and that should give us a lot of freedom whenever we realize that.
Thanks for sharing that, Randy. I had no clue that you're considering a career change into magic.
I like to watch magic. Am I the only one? I guarantee you some of y'all are going to watch it. You're going to look it up. You're going to look it up.
No, it's amazing whenever we think about how quickly we forget about the faithfulness and the power that we've seen God display in our lives, especially whenever you really kind of consider what's going on there, that we trust God with our salvation, like we literally trust God to save us from hell. But then when life begins to spin out of control, and our finances are out of whack, or our kids' health is in question, or the marriage is kind of hitting the rocks, that in those moments that oftentimes we don't trust God, that we have a faith freak out moment.
Yeah, it's, I think, part of the human condition to want to just grab control and take the reins whenever it's something that we know, absolutely know, we have no control over. So whether it's our kids' health or whatever else, that we want to be in charge, we want to make the decisions, we want to fix everything, but we also, I think, deep inside know that we can't, but we forget. We forget how faithful God has been all along, and how faithful He's going to be in that moment. But in that moment of crisis, we want to take control, and we forget just how much more powerful He actually is. I think it's just part of the fallen condition, but we've got to recognize it as that, so that we can then submit to His authority in those moments that feel out of control.
Yeah, at least we are in good company with people in the Bible. If you just look all throughout Scripture, you'll see that our story is their story as well. As the children of Israel, we're constantly forgetting the goodness of God. And whenever I think about it, sometimes it's crazy that God's chosen people, His nation, oftentimes we're worshiping other gods. How quickly you forget. We see that even Peter, who really, Peter is basically the best friend of Jesus here on earth, so him more than anybody else should have been mindful of Jesus' faithfulness and power toward him. So Matthew 14, 22 through 33, if you want to read this with me at home, it says, immediately He made the disciples get into the boat and go before Him to the other side while He dismissed the crowds. And after He had dismissed the crowds, He went up on the mountain by Himself to pray. And when evening came, He was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, He came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw Him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, it's a ghost. And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. And so Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. And Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God.
Yeah, you mentioned that Peter is one of Jesus' closest friends, and so we know that Peter had seen Jesus do amazing miracles. Like, he had seen it. He was there whenever, some of the just most miraculous things that had ever happened had happened. He was physically there. But yet in this moment, he had a crisis of faith. So it's almost like he says, if it's really you, call me to walk out to you. And so he's like, okay, we'll come. So he's walking on water, and then has this fear because he then takes his eyes off Jesus and looks at the wind and the waves, and he starts to sink. And so this crisis of faith really rattled him to the core. And maybe somebody in here would be willing to share of a time whenever you were rolling right along spiritually. Things were going really, really well. You believe with all of your heart that God was faithful, had been faithful, would always be faithful. But then there was this thing that happened, this situation, this circumstance that came up, that it rattled your faith, despite how strong you were in your faith that this thing happened. Would somebody be willing maybe to share, and I know that's personal, but would you be willing to share maybe a time in your life whenever your faith was rattled because of the circumstances that surrounded you?
After our first child, we got pregnant again. Chelsea got pregnant, and we had a miscarriage early on into the second trimester, and that was really tough for us. But the good part of that was it brought us closer in our marriage. We started going to a CG. It put us back into church because we were going to church ever so often, and we kind of grew from it. I know we grew. Our marriage grew, and it led us to some of our closest friends in our CG, and that was great. And we were living a lot better than we were before. And then it happened again, and we had the question of why, and we knew we wanted to have another child and to love another child. We just couldn't understand. The first loss was very tough for us, and we knew that we would start over and try it again. And then we got pregnant again, and we were very happy, and then it happened again, and it really shook us, and we just couldn't understand. We just felt like we were being punished, and it was just really tough for us at that time.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I appreciate you sharing that. I really do. I know that's really personal. What was kind of the turning point for you? Like, how did you see God ultimately kind of work in even that trial? I mean, I know you said a couple of things you've already mentioned. Is it brought you back into fellowship with other believers? It gave you a little more clarity just in your own personal walk. But how has it helped? How has that crisis helped you spiritually?
Well, I think before that, when we were first dating, we kind of had things planned out, and we had a plan, and it all worked out. We knew that we were going to get married, and we did. And then we knew that we were going to buy a house, and we did. And we knew that we would have the jobs, and we wanted it, and we got them. And we knew that we were going to get pregnant and have a girl, and we did. We had a girl. So, when it happened, it just kind of when it happened, it kind of made us realize that you're not in control, and when you have a plan, God has other plans, and sometimes you do have to start over. And it was just kind of a shock to us to really see that what you have planned and what your end result could be totally different than what God wants, and I think we're okay with that.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. That's a lot. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd say 15 years ago this month, I was mowing my yard and had an accident. I'm a very emotional person, so sorry. But, life's going along, and I had this crazy accident with my riding mower, and I was out of work for 8 months, so they didn't keep my job, and so I ended up losing my job. And it's like your finances. What? I got 3 kids at home. I mean, what am I going to do? God was so faithful. I mean, there would be weekly checks in the mail just show up from church members, and it's just awesome to see. And one thing that's a blessing is also too is while I was there laid up without a job, a guy that owns a insurance agency asked me if I wanted to get insurance, and I'm like, yeah, right, you're crazy. Well, for 15 years I've been an insurance agent. Actually, for 5 I opened up my own agency, so it's become a blessing. But I really want to talk about tithing too, is because how bad would I feel getting all that taken care of, and if we didn't tithe, and that's not the reason you do tithe. You got to be led to do it. We all should do it, but it's such a blessing to know that over the years, and as I continue, that I know I'm helping somebody somewhere, and it's just what a blessing to know that somebody took care of us.
That's good. So, other thing worth noting about this passage is just how quickly Peter forgets. So he's literally he's experienced many miracles during his time with Jesus, right? I mean, he's experienced the Jesus feeding the 5,000 and healing all these people and everything. But like literally, he's walking on the water, and you would think that would spur your faith. Like, holy cow, I'm walking on water. I can do anything. I can have faith forever. You would think that moment would give you secure faith forever. And then even in the midst of it, as he's like walking on water, he has some doubts there. And so how quickly we get distracted and how quickly we forget the faithfulness of God. And so I thought it would be good for us maybe to take a little stroll down a faith-building lane with talking about just the ways that the times, the moments where God has been so faithful to us. Because remembering is actually a spiritual discipline that God tells us over and over again throughout his word to remember the goodness of the Lord, proclaim what he has done in your life. And as you do that, it builds your faith, secures your faith, and the faith of others. And so why don't we do that just right now? When have been the moments in your life where God has shown up and been so faithful to you?
So me and my family have gone through some hard times before in the past, and God was evident every step of the way, whether it was when people in my family couldn't work, and so people would bring us groceries or whatever it was. Like, God was just, he had his hand on my family. And fast forward a few years, and I'm here, and I'm going through some things, and I'm thinking, I've got this. I'm in control. I can make it work. I can do it all. And just anxious and getting depressed and all of these things because I was the one trying to do it all. And finally, I kind of look back in the past, and I go, okay, God was with me then. What's different now? And I realized it was me. Like, I was the one that still was holding the reins. And so as soon as I let that go, and as soon as I just turned it over to God and went, okay, like, I get it again. Like, you're the one in control. You're the one that provides. Everything started falling right back into place again. And just a peace and a calmness came over me like I hadn't experienced in years. And I was just so thankful for that reminder.
That's great.
So I know for me, one huge thing that tested our faith when our oldest was kind of getting rebellious. We have 3 kiddos, and one's 22 and decided she was going to find her way on her own earlier than we wanted her to. And her and Arafat, my husband, didn't really get along all that well. They butted heads. They're a lot alike. And they butted heads a lot. And it came to one night where they were just at each other, and she just left. And as a mom, I mean, as a dad too, but as a mom, when your kids walk out that door, you get traumatized. And you don't know what to do. And I think I was tested majorly that night because you want to protect your kids, but you realize that He's with you forever, and your kids are meant to go, some earlier than others, unfortunately. But I think that was a turning point in our marriage, and she's good now, and she's finding her way still. But I think that was a test of my faith, and they've grown closer since then, and it all works out.
And that'll be one of those kind of moments that you can, in the future, whenever there's some sort of a relational rub or some kind of tension, that you can look back and see, God was faithful in that to bring about restoration and all those sorts of things. So then fast forward in that current moment, it gives you the ability to trust that He's going to be faithful again in that.
To follow up on what Christina was talking about, so when we were going through the issues that we were having with Brooke, we thought that we're going to fix our family by bringing the kids to church, because the kids needed to be more involved in the church and they needed to be fixed. But little did we know that we actually ourselves got fixed. And in the process, I came to the realization that I had an addiction issue that was spurring a lot of our issues at home. And the fact that we came to church to fix our family, but it really fixed myself. And so, we had a tight control of our family, thinking, okay, if we do this, we're going to get there. But little did I know God had bigger plans for us at that time. We were getting our faith tested, but in the process, we got saved.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Well, we certainly appreciate everybody sharing. I looked it up, just out of curiosity, and God, in the Scripture, we're over 60 times told to remember. And I think it's just because we have a tendency to forget. And you see the disciples forget. You see Old Testament folks that, Moses, whatever, the children of Israel, God delivers them miraculously, shows them all these crazy miracles. And, then they panic and start making idols out of jewelry and whatever else. And, you see it over and over. Tells us Deuteronomy 6:12, then take care lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. We've been delivered out of slavery to sin. We've been delivered out of a death sentence, eternal death sentence. And I think we got to remember that. We got to work hard to remember that. 1 Corinthians 11:24 says, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, this is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. So every time we take communion together as a church, that the whole idea is that we would remember all that Jesus had done. Isaiah 46:9 says, remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other God. I am God and there is none like me. If we as believers would, really strive to remember those things, then whenever life does throw us a curveball and we start kind of spiraling out of control, we realize, man, I never had control of this thing in the first place.
Yep.
If we remember the deeds of the Lord and the wonders of old, is the way the psalmist said it, I think it grounds us in a way that nothing else can ground us. There's no doctor that can give us better news than God is ultimately in control. There's no redemptive structure for our kids than God is ultimately in control of their destiny. I think as long as we get centered on that it's going to be really, really helpful. So share your stories often. I was trying to think kind of how to close up this session and ask the question, well, how do we get better at remembering? And I think we get better at remembering. Everybody's got their thing, okay? So if you're an artist, maybe you need to paint something or sculpt something or whatever else.
If you're a magician,
you can start to identify smoke and mirrors. I'm never going to live it down. I watch a show. But share your stories. In the Old Testament, God told them to build a monument, to bring these stones together, say, this is the place that I don't want you to forget what happened in this place. So whatever it is, I think what we got to do is be diligent and disciplined to remember. And so, again, thank you all for sharing your stories. Thank you for spending some time with us today. And for those of you that are meeting in groups, we just want to be sure to encourage you to share your stories and to be open, to be vulnerable about how quickly we have a tendency to forget. Because I think once we all admit that, then we're going to a whole lot more quickly, which is not the proper grammar there, but I'm struggling to get the right grammar. So we will more quickly remember who is in control, and when we do that, we can live our lives free of the control issue, because we know that He's the one that's ultimately going to see us through. So again, thank you all And we hope that this has been helpful to you as you go back to your groups now and begin to have your own discussion.